Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Chris Miles, who is a cash flow expert and what he likes to call the anti-financial advisor. Dig into that a little deeper throughout the conversation. Chris, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. Before we get started, though, just take a couple minutes and introduce yourself to the audience. Who is Chris today?
Yeah, Chris, today, I mean, you talk about me, I'm pretty much, a father of 8 children, blended family. My wife had two, I had six. So we got married together, and my wife says, "You better not have any more kids or I'm going to kill you." So we stopped at 8 kids because six of them are now teenagers or almost 20. The oldest one is living here in Utah, although we both grew up in different places. We met here, and that's kind of where we've been raising our families now. But I mean, I was raised in Oregon. I was raised very middle class. My dad worked in the automotive business. My mom was an oil painter. Have you ever watched Bob Ross, with the afro painting the happy trees and stuff? She was trained by the same master painter that trained him. And so she was been on the road a lot when we were kids, doing art shows and things like that. And so they taught me good values like work hard, your word is your bond, follow your dreams and your passions, right? But the one thing they didn't really teach me a lot about was money, other than there wasn't enough of it, right? We can't afford this. We think money grows on trees. I'm not made of money, those kind of things that hear growing up. And maybe you did too, Dan. I don't
Oh yeah,
know.
oh
But
yeah.
especially when they're raised just barely after the Depression when they were born, like obviously they were impacted by that kind of scarcity, values of money, right? And so I vowed I never want to be like that as a teenager. I said, like all teenagers, I'm going to rebel against my parents. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to be successful. So I went to college. And going to college, of course, you realize, oh, a lot of these professors aren't that successful unless they were in the business world first and then they came out. So I remember vowing at that time, I said, I think I want to become a business consultant, but I want to own my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, if I'm going to do that, I better have real life business experience before just telling people how to run their businesses. So I dropped out of college with one class to go before my bachelor's just to get that little 1 year break to get some experience. And as I did that, the business that came up that really intrigued me was being a financial advisor, not realizing they take anybody off the street. As long as you don't have a criminal record and you could pass a test with 70%, you're hired. You don't even have to be a genius with money. In fact, you could be an idiot with money and still get hired in those companies. Well, that was me. I got hired. I'm not saying I was a total idiot or anything like that, but I didn't have any economics degree or finance background. I took accounting and a banking class in high school, and that was it. So I'm working for that company and I actually really love being an entrepreneur. In fact, I never went back to college. I stayed dropped out. And while I was an entrepreneur, after several years, my dad said, "Chris, when are you going to advise me?" And that surprised me because my dad was always very guarded with his money. He would never tell us how much money he had. He was the ultra penny pinching saver. He's the guy that would go to the store and buy seriously a 20-year supply of Mrs. Buttersworth because it was on sale, right? And still 20 years later, he still got it. So it's probably expired. He doesn't care. It was on sale. That's the kind of guy my dad was. And so, when I'm looking at his finances for the first time, he said, "Chris, I'm 61 years old. I want to retire." And I'm looking at his money, and he paid off all his debt in 18 years, including his house. He was very proud of that. He stuffed money in his 401k, got his match, everything that every good boy and good girl should do. And then I had to break the news to him. I said, "Dad, if you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's how long it'll be before you run out of money." "Okay, got another answer for me, Chris?" I said, "I don't know. I honestly, you did everything right, quote unquote. You did everything that I would advise you as a financial advisor, and I could put you in this stock market thing or that thing. But the truth is, I can't guarantee you'll make money. You might even lose money, and I don't want to jeopardize your future because we guessed wrong." And that really bothered me because I part of the reason I even became a financial advisor was I was hoping to give my dad some of his life back because he had strokes by his 40s and 50s, strokes and heart attacks and stuff. I didn't want to live that life myself, but I didn't want him to just die working, which is what he thought would happen. Well, now I'm finding out he won't have much of a life after work. So, of course, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. At that time, I called up one of my friends. He was a financial advisor that I had hired into my company. He left to go do real estate investing. And I thought for sure he'd probably be broke by this point and begging for a job again. Nope. It was the opposite. He said, Chris, my life is amazing right now. I'm partnering with my dad on these real estate deals, and he's even doubled his income as a professor at the local university. I said, well, come on, that's too good to be true. There's no way in a matter of months that you guys are making this much money. And he stopped me. He said, Chris, how many of your clients are actually financially free where they don't worry about money? Well, they all worry about money, so none. All right, how about this, Chris? How many of you guys as financial advisors, because you guys should have it figured out. You're the pros. How many of you guys as financial advisors can retire not off the commissions you're earning selling this crap, but actually doing the investments you've been recommending? And as I really thought about it honestly, and I kind of took a mental picture of about the 100 or so uh, financial advisors that were in that office, I kind of thought, well, man, there's guys been working here since the late 1970s, and they still can't retire either. So maybe none of them can retire. He said, well, there's your problem. And that's where I took the Matrix Red Pill, right? I had to get out of that system. And I started to realize there's a whole other world, like a place where you can actually make good money using real assets like real estate and make higher income than I ever would doing stuff in the stock market, gambling at high risks. I could take lower risk, make higher returns doing stuff in the real estate game. In fact, so much to the point that later the next year, I was actually able to retire myself when I was 28, almost 29 years old. And that blew my mind. And of course, I had to leave being the financial advisor because I couldn't sell that crap anymore. I just can't teach something that I don't believe in and I don't do. And so I left that industry, vowed never to teach about money again. But of course, after I, became financially independent myself when I'm in my late 20s, everybody wants to know how I did it. And of course, I love teaching too. And so eventually, 2007 came out of retirement to teach people how to get out of the rat race and how to really find money so that you become work optional. You work because you want to, not because you have to. And that's kind of what I've been doing to this point.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, society tells us that, again, we're supposed to put our money in a 401k, ride the stock market, don't get worked up as it goes up and down because you're in it for the long haul. Um, but at some point, you're no longer in it for the long haul. At some
That's right.
point, looking to take money out of that, and it's such a crapshoot you know whether the time when that happens in your life is the market is at the right spot. And
Mm-hmm.
from what I found, you have zero control over that as an
Right.
investor. I mean, it's all literally a guessing game as to how's it going to go. Let's try to look in this crystal ball of you know 10, 20, 30, 50 years down the road and anticipate what the market is. And it's so fragile. The market is so fragile that the slightest little you know world economic unbalance, it goes out of whack. So, tell me the difference between, riding that constant wave of the market and real estate investing.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, because like you said, you're in it for the long haul. You hear that all the time, right? And even like the set it and forget it mentality of just put it away, don't look at it, don't even look at your numbers because you don't want to see when it's going down and how crappy of a job I'm doing as financial advisor. Which, by the way, when you say guessing, that's exactly what financial advisors do. We have no clue what we're doing. I mean, even when we pick a fund, we're basing off hopefully from past performance, but that doesn't guarantee future results, as the disclaimer always says, right? So we're just guessing. We're like Blinken and freaking Robin Hood Men in Tights in that movie, right? Where Blinken's up on the watchtower and they're like, "What are you doing up there?" I'm guessing. I'm guessing no one's coming, right? That's that's what financial advisors do. We're just guessing, and we get paid for it. That's the dumbest thing. Like you lose money, we still get paid, right? How corrupt of a system is that? And that's where that's where my integrity was at a crisis moment right there because I couldn't keep doing that. And even the S&P 500, I would teach people, hey, it's averaged 10 or 12% since man walked the earth. But then you look at the reality, and I looked at the last 30 years. I just redid the numbers last week. It's only 7.73% average for the last 30 years, not 10, not even 12, not even 8. And so we have all these false assumptions and belief, and inflation is only 2%. Bull crap. It's not 2%. It's way more than that. And the truth is, inflation is probably right about where the stock market returns are. So when you factor all that together, like just like my dad, the year 2000, almost anybody who put money into a mutual fund in 2000 had the same amount of money in 2015. The only difference is inflation took half of that away, right? But yeah, I mean, you had to wait 15 years to get back to where you were at the height of 2000. So the difference between that and real estate is pretty simple. I'll use an example of one of my clients. He was in the military. He was one of the top commanding officers in the state of California. He actually, this guy was the luckiest man in the world. This guy somehow, almost by accident, both times, pulled his money out of the market right before Y2K, and then he put it back in when it hit the low, and then right before the great global financial crisis hit, he pulled his money just before that hit, and then put it back in. And even after guessing right all those times, he had $1 million after stuffing all this money in his 401k. And just so you know, $1 million in a retirement plan when you're at retirement age, to do that, well, Fidelity, for example, out of the 45 million clients in Fidelity, only 750,000 hit that level. That means you have a 1.5% chance of maybe hitting $1 million investing in your 401k. 1.5%. So you're the top 1.5% if you have $1 million. He was that guy. He goes to his financial advisor. The financial advisor says, well, since you have $1 million based on our models and the updated models of financial advising, you can only pull out 3% a year. That's 30,000 a year. And he said, wait a minute, I'm a millionaire, but I'm living on 30,000 a year. That's below the poverty line. I'm a broke millionaire. That's not right. And so when he came to us, he says, I'm looking for something else. I need some alternate solution here. And so when we did that, now we work as like strategists and connectors, right? We're not investment advisors at all. We let you make the ultimate call where you invest, but we have like 20 plus operators in the real estate space of various kinds of real estate investing that we say, hey, these are people we vetted. Many of them I've invested in with myself, and that's why they're part of my group. And you can pick and choose, and we'll even help guide a little bit of where you can find the money to invest and how to use it. Well, with him, he decided he got a couple of duplexes that he does not manage. They're in another part of the country because California, really anything on the western half of the United States sucks for real estate. So he got properties over in the southeast where it's better returning. And somebody else manages the property for him. He doesn't do any of the work. He also got into apartment ownership with somebody else operating that. And he even got some oil and gas type of stuff that's in Oklahoma, where they pay you rent on the land and they pay you royalties on the drilling. Well, long story short, that $1 million now is paying him about $130,000 a year. That's the difference, is that in the real estate space, and again, these are backed up by real assets. It's not like, Elon Musk, Tesla, which is over 100 times its actual value, but people just buy it and they're idiots. And then, it's going to come crashing down, right? That's the problem, is that you got these arbitrary things in the stock market that you can't control, like you said. And even when they do make money, they often don't make that much money in the first place. Where real estate, not only can it grow, yes, but it produces income, and it produces real income that's stable and predictable. And it doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but man, a heck of a lot more stable and predictable than anything in the stock market I was doing. That's the difference. And so even somebody has 100 grand, you can pull out 3,000 a year of your mutual funds. That's not going to be much for retirement. Or you could get that 100 grand to maybe produce 10 grand a year for you, right? That's the difference.
And I wanted to expand on it. You kind of started to answer that question, because I think some of the listeners out there, they're going to say, well, that example you gave of your friend who had $1 million in his retirement, I think a lot of people are going to get caught up and be like, well, I don't have, that's great. If I had $1 million to invest in real estate, I'd do it. You kind of, went back and mentioned $100,000, and I think when people start thinking about investing in real estate, they initially think that I just don't have the money to do it. Like I don't have $100,000 sitting in the bank. I don't have $50,000 sitting in the bank. So where can people enter it at? Like what's the low threshold of somebody that might be listening to this and is like, this is great, but it's a pipe dream, because how do I get the $100,000 initially to make this investment and start seeing $10,000 returns a year, or whatever the case is? So where is that entry point for an investor in real estate?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would definitely say that you would want to have at least $100,000 to at least have some options. Not saying you need 100,000, because the truth is we advertise a company on our podcast that their minimum investment's $1,000, right? So you have $1,000, you could technically start generating some passive income. It won't be a lot. It won't move the needle much, right? Say you do make 8%. I'll go low on that one. 8% on $1,000, you make $80 a year. It means you're making like $7 a month. It's not going to do much for you, right? But and heck, you can buy rental properties, put in like 20% down payment. They might only be putting down 30 grand. You could do less, but we generally recommend people have at least 100,000 to invest if they really want to have options to diversify a little bit. Um, and so here's what I would tell people to do in the meantime. There's another strategy that we teach that works hand in hand with this. In fact, separately, they do a good job, but together, you actually get free faster. So they have the synergy between the two of them. It's called infinite banking. Now, I'll say this, most of the infinite banking you hear about, like if you watch YouTube or things like that, a lot of those guys overcharge. And so it actually slows down your progress. What it is, it's basically a tax-free supercharged savings account in the form of using whole life insurance, right? A whole life insurance policy. Unlike term insurance, which is death insurance, whole life insurance has a death benefit, but it also has a tax-free savings account inside of it. It's not very sexy. It's guaranteed returns. It might make 5 or 6% a year tax-free, which actually is pretty sexy nowadays because the market's not doing crap. But but still, like it's not going to make you rich by itself. In fact, if anybody tells you you're going to be able to retire and have freedom with that one thing alone, they're lying. They're just trying to sell you a bill of goods. And most of the time, they overcharge you on insurance costs to where it doesn't make you as much money, anyways, higher returns because it's going more to the insurance costs. We found a way over the last 15 years perfecting that system to where you can minimize the cost as much as you can while still keeping it tax free. But here's the cool part. As you build it up, and you can start with this. I mean, people save, I would say if you're saving at least say 5,000 a year, it's probably a good match. If you're paycheck to paycheck, just buy your term insurance that you can convert later, maybe down the road. But 5,000 a year or more, you could do some pretty good stuff with this. Well, as you build it up, now it could be a good emergency fund because I keep a lot of my emergency fund money here because I can get to that money whenever I need it. But the cool part is that you can actually make money in two places at once because you got this savings account in here that you can be using, but you can have the insurance company give you this line of credit against it. So they give you a loan, and that loan, when it comes out, they're charging you interest, of course, but you're also earning interest on all that money that's in there. So what's really happening now is that you're getting paid money. Yes, you get charged interest, but still the net, you can actually make more in interest than what they charge you. So you make money there, but then you can still take that money and invest it in real estate. You can invest it in your business. You can blow it in Vegas. Don't recommend that, but you can do whatever you want with it, right? There's no 59.5 rules or things like that you get with Roth IRAs or 401ks and stuff. But you can actually use that to invest, make money there, and make interest over here. You actually make money in two places at once, and that accelerates your ability to be able to get out of the rat race that much faster. So that's a good starting point. That's where we have a lot of our clients start from. Then as they start to build up more cash, whether it's there or in their other places, they could do that too. Another place that just came to mind when you said that is where they find money, right? That's another question. Like people are like, well, where can I use money to invest? My big advice is get money out of prison. Get your money out of prison. Everything taught to you by a financial advisor says put your money in prison. Lock it up in that company 401k. Well, unless you get fired, don't recommend that, or you quit your job, you can't get to that money whenever you need it. It's locked up. It's in prison. If the market goes down, well, tough luck. You can try to move your money out, but you've already lost the money, right? You just can't do anything with that money when it's locked up in a company. Same thing with home equity. People always say, yeah, pay off your house and stuff. Even if you got that 2.75% mortgage, that's less than inflation right now. Pay it off because debt's evil, right? Well, the truth is that equity you're putting in your house makes a 0% rate of return. It doesn't make you anything. It doesn't make your house appreciate any faster when you pay that loan down, and your payment's still the same until you pay it off anyways. So it does nothing for your day-to-day, month-to-month living. The best thing you can do is keep that money in your possession. So instead of locking in 401ks and paying extra on your house, I'm not saying don't make your payments. Please make your payments. But don't accelerate the payment on your house. Take that money instead, get it in your control, so then you can choose where to deploy it, where you can put it into to make actual income. That's the big difference. Even somebody has investment properties, that's one thing I see a lot of times too. People are like, well, I already have a real estate property. It's in my backyard, Okay, cool. Well, how's it doing for you? One client who's in California, another one, he had 700,000 of equity in his property. When I asked him what's his profit on it after he pays his expenses, $200 a month. And he was happy about it because his goal was put my head down, work hard, and eventually in about 6 years, I'll pay off that mortgage and then I'll get all $2,400. Which, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of people that say, oh, I just got to pay off that house. And once it's paid off free and clear, now I get this mortgage free, this rent that's coming in mortgage free, right? I still have to pay tax and insurance, but at least now I don't have that extra payment. So he's going to make 2,400 a month. I said, well, here's the deal, buddy. You could actually sell this property, take your 700,000, invest it somewhere else in other properties. Even if you made 10%, that's 70,000 a year, not 2,400 a year that he's currently making. Although he wants to get it to the point of making 2,400 a month in 6 years down the road. I said, really, if you had 70,000 a year now, you reinvested that, you'd have over 100,000 a year 6 years down the road instead of just 24,000 a year. Well, for 2 years, he fought me on it. Finally, he said, all right, I'll do it because I'm not sure if the market's going to go up or not. So I'll sell the property. Sold it. He's got a bunch of properties down in the Southeast, like places like Louisiana, places like that. He just sent me an email a few months ago saying, okay, Chris, guess what? I just hit $8,500 a month. And I said, see, I told you it would have been over 10,000 if you listened to me 2 years earlier, but it is what it is. Right. But now he's like, I get it. Like I see it, but he was so much in that Dave Ramsey trapped mentality. It's like, no, you just got to pay off your debt. And of course he's Asian too. And Asians have that same mentality of you just pay off debt and then your life should be better. But what we're finding is we get these Dave Ramsey poster children that have paid off all their debt. They stored up all this money and then they're asset rich and cash poor. They have this money, but it doesn't pay them squat. And that's where you're stuck in that rat race forever. And just getting your money unlocked and get it out to work for you makes a big, big difference.
So if there's somebody who's, in their late 30s, 40s, something like that, and they do have substantial size 401k, which again, they can't touch for another, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Is there a way for them to get that out without having to pay all those penalties? Or is it kind of a cost of doing business to take that on the chin and then see some greater returns in real estate down the road?
Yeah. I mean, it's most likely you have to take it on the chin. And like I said, you're gonna have to change jobs, right? Either get fired or get laid off. Because if you're working for that company, they will not let you pull it out and invest it however you want. You have to leave that company. Um, but I mean, there are ways you can get to it without the 10% penalty. You will always pay taxes, but I mean, there may not be a 10% penalty if you use it for like education, college education. It could be for a down payment on a house, but they only let you use 10,000 of it. So it's not a lot. Or if you have a financial hardship. So basically, if you're going broke, okay, great. Then you only have to pay taxes, not a penalty too. So it's not, that's the thing is that it's really not great. And here's the other thing I found out recently. I never really, I've always told people that the fees in 401ks stink and they really don't keep up with the stock market anyways. Well, I decided to test that theory. I went to Fidelity's website recently, and you can do the same thing. It's just a Google search. It's not hard. It's public information. But I went to Fidelity and I looked at the last 10 years and I looked at the real rate of return of the S&P 500. 10 years, it's been 10.1%, which is better than what it typically does long term because we had the roaring 2010s. Well, and 2020 helped too. But then I looked at their target date retirement funds, the funds that says if you want to retire in 2040, put it here, right? Or 2055, you put it here. Well, all those target date retirement funds did 8% while the market did 10.1. So it did 2% worse. That doesn't include that it has a 0.75% fee on it as well. So if you really go back to what I said earlier, if the stock market long term is average about 7.73%, and you take away 2.73%, you're left with a 5% return in that 401k. Even when you get the match, by the way, just so you know, the match is always the biggest hangup. People are like, well, that's free money. I can get a 50 or 100% rate of return. Yeah, you get that one time, but it's not compounding 50 or 100%. Put it into a calculator, go find some calculator on calculator.net, do a compound interest calculator, put in, you putting in $10,000 a year in your 401k for 20 years, making 100% return, you'll be richer than Bezos. Okay. I'm pretty sure 10,000 a year, your dumb 401k is not going to make you richer than the richest billionaire in the world. So just know that it doesn't return that. It only adds really like 1 or 2% return at the end of the day. So you're looking to make 6 or 7% in your 401k, where again, I can make double-digit returns in my real estate stuff, have real assets, tangible assets that back me up. And I know that I'm getting paid income off that. And like I said, like, I mean, I can loan money. I don't have to buy a property. That's another mistake people make. You don't have to go buy the property in your backyard. You could literally, if you could buy a property where somebody else manages it, but you could literally buy no properties. You could be lending money to real estate investors that then go make their own profits off of it. It's easy to loan somebody at 10, 12, maybe 15%. I just got money paid back earlier this week where they paid me 15% per year contract. Lent them that money, got it back with the principal and the return on top. And then I can do it again. Those are the kind of things you can do. There's, like I mentioned, the oil and gas space. Heck, I mean, our investment the first year only did 8%, but the next month there's another investment that came out that their first year returns were 35%. And sadly, most of my clients beat me, on my own returns, but that's what happens. So there's so many opportunities when you start to realize that there's this whole other world that financial advisors either don't know about or don't want you to know about. When you start to realize it's there, it's kind of liberating. It's kind of exciting. In fact, that's what happened to me after I quit being a financial advisor. I was so freaking excited to know that, wait, I can make 1% a month on my money. Wait, that means $100,000 could pay me $1,000 a month. That's blowing my mind. That's even possible, because I thought I got to save $2 million so I can live on $5,000 a month. No, if I had $2 million, I could potentially be living on $20,000 a month, not 5,000. That kind of stuff blew me away. And so I was on cloud nine. People would say, well, what are you so excited about? Man, I've been learning this stuff about alternative investments. Oh yeah. How much have you made yet? Nothing. I'm just learning about it, but it's freaking awesome. And eventually a few months later, I was starting to make money on those things. But once I started to really understand it and study it, but you start to realize there's millions of us making money just like this. But again, financial advisors aren't paid to tell you this stuff. They don't get paid if you go invest in real estate. They lose money if you pull your money out from them. Financial advisors hate us for that reason. That's why I'm more of an anti-financial advisor, because our clients are saying, well, to screw this stock market stuff that I can't control and I'm making nothing anyways. I lost 20% last year. Let's put it over here. Let's do something else that can actually give me some predictability with my income. And maybe I can even buy some of my time back and my life back. Maybe I can even spend time with my kids while they still want to spend time with me before they move out. Maybe I want to go and pursue my passions or go serve and, fulfill a bigger, purpose in my life or something like that. Like and even a lot of our clients, some of them say, you know what, I love my job or I love my business. I'm going to keep doing it, but I would love that the freedom to say, you know what, I don't have to show up to work today. I don't need to pay my bills because all this is paying my bills for me. Anything I'm making my job or my business that I love is just gravy. That's the kind of life I like to live.
Yeah. When you talk about private lending,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you can dig in a little deeper on that, I mean, what type of risk is involved for you? What type of protection do you have from default and all that sort of stuff? You essentially are being the bank.
Yes, exactly. You are being the bank. And so, like the bank, this is the part where if people tell you that passive income is, set it and forget it, which is what financial advisors teach you, that's not what we want to do here. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do the work, but it does mean you need to do your due diligence. And it's more important about who you invest with than what you invest in. I'll repeat that. It's more important about who you invest with than what you invest in. I always like to find people that have good integrity. I love hearing people that got kicked in the teeth and, maybe during different recessions, even the last, global financial crisis when real estate tanked. I love to hear what's your worst deal that you had. Were you able to pay people back? How'd you do it? Like if they did pay people back, right? I love hearing the stories where they say, you know what? I took money out of my own personal savings to pay these people back, even though the real estate deal tanked then. And man, did I learn a lesson. I'm never going to do this again. And those are the people I like. Like they've been through a full market cycle. I don't give money to real estate investors that have been around for a couple of years, or showed up in 2018 when everything was great and any idiot and their dog could make money in real estate. Like I want the people that struggled, that had to go through recessions and different market cycles. Those are the people I trust. And so you find those people first, right? And that's why a lot of people hire us, because they're like, I just don't have to go find those people. It takes too long. And I got a life. But those are the people that we try to find. Like people have good integrity, that their word is their bond. Kind of like my dad taught me, those same values they embody as well. And they don't take high risks with the money. But no, that there's always risk. I mean, even I was saying the last year, especially 2022 was a rough year for a lot of investors. Even the experienced ones had some challenges, especially if they did apartment investing. Apartment investing has been just having a big, horrible day, in the last year or so. Well, some of them are like, man, we got to sell this property sooner than we want. And we're just hoping to get our money back. We probably won't make any returns. But I always tell my clients the biggest thing you should look for is a return of your money before you worry about the return on your money. You want to make sure you get your money back first and foremost, that's protected. Then if you get returns, that's gravy too. Although many of them will have contractual returns built in. So it really is more important about who you invest with. Even on the short-term lending, I knew the person. I had a relationship with them for the last 5 or 6 years. And I knew kind of what was going on behind the scenes with the money and things like that. And they were actually trying to really buy some time before they sold one of their apartment buildings. So I said, you know what? I'm pretty sure you'll sell this thing. I'll lend you the money. And I did. And I got paid back last week, so that's big. Now, if you want to reduce risk, sometimes we'll have people in our network that have what they call real estate funds, right? Not mutual funds, not REITs. Those are definitely not real estate. Funds just mean that maybe they buy multiple things or have multiple projects, and they just have a fund of money that you put money into, and they're using that money interchangeably going in and out. They pay you usually a set return. So it's not project based where if I like the deal I did with that one guy when I lent him the money, it was for a specific apartment building that he was trying to buy extra few months to get it sold, right? He needed some operating capital. So I knew once he got sold that building, he would get all the cash back and then some to pay me back. But sometimes a fund, I think, especially lately, is a little bit safer way to go, because if there's one deal that doesn't do great, there's usually other deals that are doing fine, and you have a little bit more protection of diversity there. So there's different ways to reduce risk, but the biggest thing is just who you're investing with is the most important thing.
Yeah. And I think probably, people's biggest hesitation is going to be when you talk about real estate market is '08. So again, none of us can predict the future, but how you know how is it safer, with the experience of 2008? How is it safer than the stock market is?
Well, the one thing you see with the stock market is usually about every 5 to 7 years, it tanks. And it might tank for a couple of years, and then it comes back up eventually, right? Look at 2000 to 2015. Like I mentioned, anybody who had money in the stock market, even though the stock market hit the highs of 2000 by 2013, because you had fees coming out, you usually had to wait till at least 2015. And that was my experience when I had clients over that entire period of time. 2015 was people finally said, oh, I'm finally back to where I started. you know, in real estate, it's definitely not that long of a curve, right? But there is risk. And I always remind people of that, of course. But I mean, the biggest difference is there's an actual asset there. Like with a company valuation, and right now the stock market overall is overvalued. It's they've I mean, with everything with 2020 stimulus spending in 2021, it drove that market up just into a huge bubble. And even though it's come down a little bit, it hasn't come down nearly as much as it should. Like it's still hanging on there because they're still hanging on to hope that the economy is going to be just fine on the other end of this. And I think the economy will suffer. And I think even in real estate, there'll be certain markets, especially on like the hotter markets like Phoenix, California, places that are the popular things you hear about in the news. Those are the places that get hit the worst. The places that don't get hit by real estate markets tanking as much is going to be the places like in the Midwest or the Southeast, right? The places that are not the popular hot markets like Vegas. Like Vegas is a crappy market to ever invest in. But there are plenty of boring markets that are just, they don't appreciate a lot. They don't decline a lot as a result, if at all. And they're just stable. And those are the markets I like to look at more. So remember, United States is a big country. There's a lot of places you can invest in and it won't make the news because it's just too boring. It doesn't make big enough news because it's stable, right? They like the stuff that sounds dramatic. That's what the news likes. Also know this is not 2008. 2008, it did have a huge bubble. There was way too much appraisal fraud going on. Mortgage lenders were lending to anybody with a heartbeat. That's not happening today. And there was way more supply of houses too. So there's an oversupply of houses, way overestimating on the values of the homes. and mortgage companies were just lending people money left and right. None of those things are happening today. We have an undersupply of homes, which is why people are having a hard time finding a home right now.
Right.
We've got mortgages they're still very strict, and not anybody can just buy a mortgage right now. In fact, many people are getting denied mortgages. And appraisals, well, appraisers, they pretty much got destroyed out of the business. So appraisers, if anything, they're almost more conservative on their values than aggressive because they don't want to lose their licenses like many did in the last recession. So it's just a different time. And here's what I promise you. Here's a secret for any to knowing what market to be invested in, even outside of real estate, is listen to what people are recommending and do the opposite. Whatever the news tells you, whatever your neighbor, that brother-in-law tells you to invest in, do the opposite. If they tell you that real estate's going to tank, the one thing I can promise you is that real estate's not going to tank. But that's the popular thing because of recency bias, right? Everybody remembers it, so they think that's the case. Nobody ever mentioned that the stock market crashed big time during that point. They just think, oh, well, we came up in the 2010s. We're good, right? But the stock market got hit even worse than real estate. It's just easier to get out of than real estate was. So everybody's telling you real estate's going to go south. Well, that's how you know real estate probably won't go south as much as people expect. But when people say things like last year, I remember people saying, oh, don't hold cash. You'll lose to inflation. What did I do in 2022? I started saving more cash because I knew that everybody's going to get all their cash out and then they won't be able to get it back out again, right? Which is a lot what's happening to a lot of people right now. They're not very liquid. I built up my cash reserves bigger for the opportunity for this very period of time, which now cash is becoming king. And now there's even people like Warren Buffett that's built up his cash from 125 billion to 147 billion in just 6 months, right? You know, all these people are building up cash right now that know what's going on because they go the opposite direction of the crowds. They run the opposite way. That's the important thing. So that's why I don't really fear real estate. Now, I don't go buy into apartment buildings because those were the ones that were really hyped up. So I've told people, even my own clients, I said, hey, apartment buildings, high risk, you might be careful of that. Even self-storage, people were fleeing to self-storage in 2020 a little bit. And usually that's recession resistant, that's safer in a recessionary time. But, you know, as a result of the kind of the bubble that happened, now even self-storage is kind of like figuring out where's its value supposed to be. And so it's a little bit trickier right now. But like I said, lending, because banks are charging more for money, I could make more, right? Because I can charge higher interest and they can just get the money easy without going through a bank process. When it comes to oil and gas, that was one where the prices have been pushed down by the re-election of last year. Now they're starting to pop back up again. There's a lot of things going on there. Raw land. I'm making a lot of money in raw land right now. Not by me doing anything. I have partners that do all the work, but we're buying and then turning around and selling raw land to people. Since 2020, it's been awesome because now people are like, oh, I want to get away from people, or I want to have land where the government can't tell me to wear a mask, or something like that. There's a lot of benefit to having that kind of, easy piece of property that someone can seriously finance through us for 200, 300 bucks a month, So there's a lot of opportunity there. And by the way, that $250,000 invested in buying that raw land at wholesale is now cash flowing $7,600 a month for me. So there's definitely advantages to doing that. And it's not just buying that property, right? And buying that one area. There's so much of a country that we can invest in different places at different times, and so many different types of investing that we can do, that you start to realize that, man, I don't need the crappy one size fits all mutual fund. I don't need that.
Chris, we've covered a lot of different topics here. Is there anything that we missed that you think would be valuable to the listeners?
I think the biggest thing really is, no matter where you are right now, my advice is always these three things: is get lean, get liquid, and get out, right? Get lean means, I don't mean you have to live on rice and beans, that kind of stuff, but it does mean that really watch how much you're spending right now. Also find ways to increase your income too. And the way you can increase income in any job or business is to focus on how you can create a win for the person that pays you. How can you create value for them, solve problems for them? How can you, really serve them in such a way that you can get a raise or to increase your revenue that you have in your business? That's the number one secret. That's the number one economic engine. And that's the biggest inflation fighter. Even Warren Buffett said the best way to counter inflation is make more money. And the way to make more money is to serve and solve problems better. That's how you do it. And so if you start to do that, get lean with your expenses, make more money as well. So you have more profit, more money you can use to then get it out of prison, get that money away from the freaking the stock market and things like that. Keep it, don't put those extra payments on your equity into your house. Instead, use that money to then get it out to invest to generate income on a regular basis. Even if you get laid off, you'll feel safer. Just like I have a client that's in Hollywood. He actually has been laid off. Well, not laid off, but they've had freezes or strikes repeatedly between 2020 and now. He's so grateful that almost all of his expenses are covered by his investments so that he doesn't have to rush back into Hollywood to take the first crappy job that's given to him. Right. That's what you really want. You want that flexibility and that freedom. And that means you got to get lean, get liquid, and get out.
Yeah. Love it. Chris, if any of the listeners want to, dig in more to this and, find out more about what you do, where can they find you out on the internet?
Yeah, you can go to moneyripples.com. Or you can even follow our podcast, the Money Ripples podcast. We have on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you consume podcasts.
So, Chris, that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places. It comes from the opening lyrics of the Michael Ferrante song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. What's one of the little things that Chris does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
I'm here right now on your show. I mean, that's how I give back, even my own podcast. I mean, I could just be quiet. I could just be living my own quiet life with my family and sitting on a beach with my pina colada or whatever and dancing in the rain. But, but the truth is that what's our real purpose in life? And the reason my company is called Money Ripples is because with money, when you have more of that and you take care of your own needs, you start looking outside of yourself and you start realizing I can create a ripple effect through other people's lives too. I can serve people. I can be a better servant, even a servant for God, a servant for my mankind, or whatever it might be. You can be someone that makes a bigger impact in that ripple effect in people's lives, not just your family. And that's what I'm here to do, is to create that ripple effect through you so that you can create a ripple effect through others. That's something that will last beyond me. Even if I'm off this planet, I know that you can create something bigger and create a much better legacy of freedom, prosperity, and happiness and joy for others.
Love that. Love that answer. Chris, it's a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. For folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of one of my books. And again, Chris, really appreciate the time. I think this is a very valuable conversation for the listeners.
Such an honor, Dan. Thank you so much.
You bet.